I am Joshua. I'm 32 years old, and at the celebratory dinner for my own MBA graduation and promotion to senior strategy consultant, my father looked me dead in the eye and told me he wished I'd never been born. Before I tell you how I walked out of that restaurant and completely erased myself from their lives, leaving them with nothing but their regret, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's good to know we're all in this together. The clinking of silverware on porcelain sounded like thunder in the sudden silence. My mother's wine glass, halfway to her lips, froze in midair. Across the table, my mentor and boss, Lincoln, who had just been praising my final thesis and my work ethic, looked like he'd swallowed a wasp. The entire private dining room at Delmonico's, a place I had chosen and paid for myself to celebrate this milestone, was holding its breath. Every single person, my friends, my colleagues, the managers from my firm, was staring. They were staring at my father, Aaron, whose face was a mask of cold, sneering disappointment. And then they were staring at me. We wish you'd never been born. The words didn't just hang in the air. They landed like physical blows. Each syllable was a punch to the gut, stealing the air from my lungs. This wasn't a heated argument. It wasn't a slip of the tongue fueled by too much bourbon. It was a declaration, a verdict on my entire existence, delivered with the casual cruelty of a man swatting a fly. For a split second, the world went blurry. I could feel the familiar sting behind my eyes, the hot shame creeping up my neck. The old me, the little boy who lived his life desperate for a scrap of approval, wanted to apologize. That little boy wanted to ask what he had done wrong this time. But then, I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw the arrogance in his jaw, the dismissal in his eyes, and something inside me just broke. It wasn't a loud break. It was the quiet snap of a tether finally being cut. Let's rewind 20 minutes. I had rented the gold room at Delmonico's. It was the kind of place my parents always pretended they could afford but never actually could. White tablecloths, 3 forks at every setting, waiters in tuxedos who knew how to disappear until you needed them. I had just finished my MBA while working full-time. I had secured a massive promotion. My salary had just doubled. I was finally, undeniably successful. I thought foolishly that this would be enough. I thought if I put the success right in front of them, plated it up with a side of filet mignon, they would finally have to acknowledge me. My parents, Aaron and Elena, arrived 45 minutes late. They didn't apologize. They didn't bring a card. They didn't even hug me. My mother's first words were a complaint about the valet parking. My father's first words were to ask if the wine was top shelf or the house swill. We sat down. I introduced them to Lincoln, the CEO of my firm. Lincoln is a man of few words but immense presence. He shook my father's hand and said, "You must be very proud. Joshua is one of the finest strategic minds I've ever encountered." My father just grunted. He picked up the menu, scanned the prices, even though there were no prices on the guest menus, and sneered. "Strategic mind? He's good at pushing paper. Let's not get ahead of ourselves." I felt Lincoln stiffen beside me. "It's a bit more than paper pushing, Mr. Adams. He just saved our biggest client $3 million in a fiscal quarter." My mother, Elena, chimed in then. She waved her hand dismissively, her bracelets clattering. "Well, that's nice, dear. But money isn't everything. We were just telling Caleb, you know Caleb, Joshua's brother? We were telling him how proud we are of his residency. Did you know Caleb is going to be a neurosurgeon?" There it was. Caleb, the golden child. He wasn't even there. He claimed he was on call at the hospital, a lie I would later unravel, but his ghost sat at the table with us, taking up all the oxygen. "Actually," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "this dinner is to celebrate my MBA. Can we focus on that for one night?" My Aunt Carol, sitting at the end of the table, a woman who thrives on other people's misery, smirked over her rim of her glass. "Oh, Joshua, don't be so sensitive. Your mother is just excited. It's not every day you get a doctor in the family. An MBA is, well, it's basically a degree in how to be a greedy corporate suit, isn't it?" I gripped my napkin under the table. It's a degree that took me 3 years of night classes to get, Carol. And Caleb has been studying for 10 years. My father interrupted, his voice booming. He saves lives. You save what? Tax loopholes? Don't compare yourself to your brother. It's embarrassing. The waiter arrived with the appetizers, sensing the tension, trying to slide the plates down quickly. I'm not comparing myself, I said, my voice rising slightly. I'm asking for one night where we don't talk about Caleb. Just one night where you acknowledge that I've accomplished something. My father slammed his hand on the table. The silverware jumped. Accomplished something? You think making money makes you a man? You think this fancy dinner buys you respect? I think I deserve respect because I'm your son, I said. My mother let out a dramatic sigh, dabbing at dry eyes with a napkin. Oh, here we go. Always the victim. Why do you have to ruin everything, Joshua? We came all this way, and you just want to pick a fight. I want to be seen, I snapped. That was when it happened. My father leaned forward, his face turning that shade of purple I knew so well from my childhood. The vein in his forehead pulsed. Seen? He spat. I see you. I see a selfish, ungrateful brat who thinks the world revolves around him. You want the truth? You want to know what I really think every time I look at you? The room went silent. Lincoln started to stand up, perhaps to intervene, but I held up a hand. I needed to hear this. Say it, I challenged him. We wish you'd never been born, he said. He didn't shout it. He said it with a flat, deadly calm. Your mother and I, we look at you and we see a mistake. Caleb was the plan. You were just a burden we've been stuck carrying for 32 years. I looked at my mother. I waited for her to gasp, to hit his arm, to tell him to stop. She just took a sip of her wine and looked away, examining her manicure. She didn't deny it. Her silence was a signature on his statement. I looked at Aunt Carol. She was looking down at her plate, pretending to cut a piece of cheese. I looked at Lincoln. He looked horrified. He looked at me with an expression of profound sorrow, not pity, but shared pain. And then, I looked inside myself. I expected to find devastation. I expected to find a crumbling ruin. Instead, I found a strange, cold clarity. It was like a fever breaking. All the years of trying to please them, the money I'd sent, the events I'd attended, the insults I'd swallowed, it all evaporated. I didn't need their approval anymore because there was nothing there to approve. You cannot get water from a dry well. You cannot get love from people who are incapable of giving it to you. I picked up my napkin and placed it gently on the table. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I stood up. Wish granted, I said. My father blinked, confused by my lack of shouting. What? You wish I'd never been born? I repeated, my voice steady, projecting to the back of the room. Consider it done. As of this moment, Joshua Adams does not exist to you. Do not call me. Do not write to me. Do not come to my home. Live your lives exactly as you requested, as though you never had a son named Joshua. Don't be dramatic, my mother scoffed, though her voice wavered slightly. Sit down and eat your steak. I signaled the head waiter, who was hovering nervously by the door. Marcus. Yes, sir. Marcus stepped forward immediately. I pulled out my black Amex card, the one I had earned, the one my credit score, built from the ashes of my youth, had secured. Please put the entire bill for the room, the alcohol, and the service on this card. Add a 30% tip for your staff for dealing with this. I handed him the card. Then I turned to Lincoln. I'm sorry to cut the evening short, Lincoln, but I think I need some fresh air. I'll see you at the office on Monday. Lincoln stood up. He put a hand on my shoulder. Go. We've got this. I turned my back on them. You walk out that door, you ungrateful little punk, and you don't come back. My father yelled after me. He was losing control of the narrative, and he hated it. Who's going to help you when you fail? Who's going to be there for you? I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I walked through the heavy mahogany doors of the private room, through the bustling main dining area where happy families were sharing meals, and out into the cool night air of the city. The valet saw me coming and ran for my car. I stood on the curb, taking a deep breath. The air smelled of rain and exhaust, but to me it smelled like freedom. But as I stood there, waiting for my car, the adrenaline began to fade, and the memories, the evidence of why this had been inevitable, came flooding back. This wasn't just about tonight. This was about a lifetime of being the shadow. The valet brought my car around, but I didn't get in immediately. I needed a moment. My hands were finally starting to shake, a delayed reaction to the adrenaline dump. I leaned against the cold metal of the car door and closed my eyes. The image of my father's face, twisted in that sneering rejection, flashed in my mind. But it wasn't the first time I'd seen that look. That look had defined my childhood. To understand why walking out of that restaurant was the hardest and yet the easiest thing I've ever done, you have to understand the hierarchy of the Addams household. There was King Aaron and Queen Elena. There was the Crown Prince, Caleb. And then there was me, the servant, the scapegoat, the mistake. I remember being 14 years old. It was mid-November, and a nasty storm had blown through our town, ripping shingles off the roof of our two-story colonial. Water was leaking into the attic, threatening to ruin the ceiling of the master bedroom. My father was too cheap to call a professional on a Sunday, and he certainly wasn't going to go up there himself with his bad back, a condition that mysteriously vanished whenever he wanted to play golf. "Joshua," he had bellowed up the stairs, "get the ladder. There's a tarp in the garage. Fix it." It was 35 degrees outside. The rain was coming down in sheets of ice. I was 14. I spent 6 hours on that roof. My fingers were so numb I couldn't feel the hammer. The wind threatened to knock me off the slick shingles every time I stood up. I was terrified. I was freezing. But I did it. I nailed the tarp down, dragged the heavy bags of sand up to secure the edges, and stopped the leak. When I finally climbed down, soaked to the bone, shivering so hard my teeth clattered, I walked into the kitchen. I tracked a little bit of mud and wet leaves onto the linoleum. My mother didn't rush over with a towel. She didn't have hot cocoa waiting. She screamed, "Look at this mess!" she shrieked, pointing at the floor. "I just mopped this. Aaron, look what he did." My father stormed in from the living room, where the TV was blaring a football game. "Can't you do anything right? You're useless. Clean this up before you even think about changing." I cleaned the floor on my hands and knees, shivering in my wet clothes. And where was Caleb? Caleb, who was 12 at the time, was sitting on the plush sofa in the living room, dry and warm. He was playing a brand new video game console. "Dad got it for me?" Caleb had smirked when he saw me looking. "Because I got a B+ on my science project." A B+. I had straight A's. I had just saved their roof. I got hypothermia and a scolding. Caleb got a B+ and a console. That was the dynamic. But nothing illustrated it quite as clearly as the cars. When I turned 16, I needed a car to get to my after-school job washing dishes at a diner. A job I had to take because my parents refused to give me an allowance, unlike Caleb, who got $50 a week just for existing. I saved every penny. I ate the free shift meals at the diner so I didn't have to spend money on food. After 2 years, I had enough to buy a beaten-up, rust-bucket Honda Civic with 180,000 miles on it. The heater didn't work. The passenger door didn't open from the outside. But it was mine. I drove it home, beaming with pride. I had bought my own freedom. My father looked at it in the driveway and laughed. "I hope you don't expect to park that heap in front of the house. It brings down the property value. Park it around the block." 6 months later, Caleb turned 16. I came home from school to find a flatbed truck in the driveway. Sitting on it, gleaming in the sunlight, was a Porsche 911. Not a used one. A brand new silver Porsche. I stood there, my backpack slipping off my shoulder, staring. It was insane. We weren't billionaires. My father did okay in real estate, but a brand new Porsche for a 16-year-old? It was financial suicide. It was madness. "Happy birthday, son!" my father yelled, tossing Caleb the keys. Caleb caught them, grinning like a Cheshire cat. I walked up to my father. "Dad? A Porsche?" You told me you couldn't help me with insurance on my Civic. My father adjusted his tie, looking down at me. Joshua, try to understand. Caleb is going to be a doctor, a surgeon. He needs to project an image of success and reliability. People trust a man in a Porsche. Nobody trusts a man in a rusted Honda. It's an investment in his future. He's 16, I argued. He doesn't even have a license yet. He failed algebra. He will learn, my mother snapped, coming out of the house with a camera. Stop being so jealous, Joshua. It's ugly. Smile for your brother. I didn't smile. I watched Caleb rev the engine, grinding the gears because he didn't know how to drive a stick shift. My heart sank, not just because of the inequality, but because I realized then that in their eyes, Caleb was the protagonist of our family movie. I was just an extra, the final straw of my childhood. The moment I stopped trying to buy their love with sentimental gestures was Christmas of my senior year. I had worked double shifts at the diner for months. My grades suffered slightly, but I pulled them back up. I wanted to give them something amazing. I thought if I give them something huge, something they really want, they'll see me. I bought them a massive flat-screen TV and a leather recliner for my dad. Cost me nearly $3,000. My entire savings. Christmas morning came. I dragged the boxes out. "Merry Christmas," I said, my heart pounding. My father tore open the box. He looked at the TV. "It's the 50-inch? The 60-inch has better refresh rates, Joshua. But thanks, I guess. We can put it in the guest room." My mother looked at the recliner. "It's a bit bulky, isn't it? It doesn't really match the drapes." They went back to sipping their coffee. No hugs, no tears, just criticism. Then Caleb handed them his gift. It was a small, flat package wrapped in drugstore paper. My mother opened it. It was a cheap plastic frame. Inside was a picture of Caleb, just a selfie he had printed out. He was wearing a Halloween costume lab coat and a toy stethoscope around his neck. "It's me as a doctor," Caleb said, his mouth full of a cinnamon roll. "To remind you of my future." My mother burst into tears. She clutched the frame to her chest. "Oh, Aaron, look at our boy. He's so focused. This is the most beautiful gift I've ever received." My father wiped a tear from his eye. "We'll hang this over the mantel, right in the center." I looked at the $3,000 TV destined for the guest room. I looked at the plastic frame destined for the place of honor. That was the day I realized the game was rigged. I could never win. But like a fool, or maybe just like a desperate child, I didn't stop playing. I kept trying right up into adulthood. And that led to the financial abuse that nearly destroyed my future. The valet opened the door to my car. A sleek Audi that I had bought for myself. No thanks to anyone else. I slid into the leather seat, the silence of the cabin wrapping around me. I drove away from Delmonico's, but I didn't go straight home. I drove aimlessly, letting the rhythm of the highway soothe the raw nerves exposed by the dinner. The road stretched out before me, reminding me of the path I had taken to get here. It had been an uphill climb on broken glass. College was hell. While Caleb was fully funded by the bank of mom and dad to attend a prestigious private university for his pre-med track, where he majored in partying, I went to a state school. I didn't qualify for financial aid because my parents' income was too high, but they refused to contribute a cent. "You need to learn the value of a dollar," my father had told me as he wrote a check for Caleb's fraternity dues. I worked 3 jobs. I was a library assistant by day, a bartender by night, and a tutor on weekends. I slept 4 hours a night. I ate ramen and peanut butter. But I graduated at the top of my class with a degree in finance. Then came the London dream. 2 years out of college, I was working as a junior analyst. I was burnt out but ambitious. I found a master's program in London, a dual degree that would skyrocket my career. I had saved up $40,000. It was my escape fund. It was my ticket to a life where I wasn't just Caleb's brother. I was 2 weeks away from booking my flight when the phone rang. It was my mother. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "Joshua, you have to help us. It's over. We're going to lose everything." My stomach dropped. Mom? What's going on? Is Dad okay? It's the business, she wailed. The market crashed. The bank is calling the loan on the house. They're going to foreclose, Joshua. We'll be on the street. I felt a cold dread. The house. The house I fixed the roof on. The house where I was invisible but still. It was my home. How much? I asked, my hand gripping the phone. 40,000, she whispered. We need 40,000 to stop the foreclosure. We just need to bridge the gap until Aaron closes this big deal next month. Please, Joshua. Family comes first. We can't lose the house over this. 40,000. Exactly what I had saved. Mom, that's my grad school money. That's my London money. Joshua. Her voice turned sharp instantly. Are you really going to be that selfish? You'd let your parents sleep in a shelter so you can go gallivanting around Europe? After everything we've done for you? Everything you've done? I wanted to scream, but the programming ran deep. The guilt button was installed firmly in my psyche. Family comes first. If I give you this money, I said, my voice trembling, I can't go. I have to decline the acceptance. There will be other schools, she said, her voice softening now that she sensed victory. But you only have one family. Please, son, be the hero. I closed my eyes. I saw my dream of London dissolving. I saw myself stuck in my cubicle for another 5 years. Okay, I said. I'll wire it tomorrow. I sent the money. I declined the London offer. I stayed. A month later, I went home for a weekend to check on them. I expected to find them scrimping and saving, recovering from the near bankruptcy. Instead, the driveway was paved. The house had been repainted, and parked in the garage next to my father's BMW was the Porsche. But it had new rims, custom rims. I thought you were broke, I said to my father over dinner. I thought you were losing the house. We recovered, he said vaguely, chewing on a steak. The deal came through. So, can I get my money back? For school? He laughed. Don't be gauche, Joshua. That money went into the equity of the house. It's an investment. Besides, we had to help Caleb. Med school applications are expensive. Tutors, prep courses. It adds up. I felt a sick feeling in my stomach. You used my money for Caleb? It all goes into the same pot, my mother said breezily. Don't be petty. I swallowed my rage. I went back to work. I worked harder. I got into the MBA program locally. I told myself it was fine, but the doubt had been planted. It grew into a thorny vine when I saw the Instagram post. It was about 6 months before the graduation dinner. I was scrolling through social media, and I saw a post from one of Caleb's friends, a guy named Skeeter. The photo was geotagged in Las Vegas. It showed Caleb, looking disheveled and wild-eyed, standing next to a roulette table. He was holding a stack of chips. In the background, through the casino doors, you could see the valet stand. And there, unmistakable in its silver arrogance, was the Porsche. The caption read, Doc Caleb betting it all on black. Hashtag medschoollife, hashtag Vegas baby, hashtag rolling high. I zoomed in on the photo. The date was from 3 days ago. Caleb was supposed to be in finals week at his university. I called my mother. Mom, is Caleb in Vegas? Don't be ridiculous, she snapped. He's in the library studying. I just spoke to him. He's so stressed, poor thing. We sent him another 5,000 for lab fees. Lab fees? I asked. Mom, I think. Stop trying to sabotage your brother, she yelled. You're just jealous because he's going to be a doctor and you're just... Whatever it is you do. I hung up, but I took a screenshot of the photo. That was the seed of the twist. That was the moment I started to suspect that the golden child was actually fool's gold. But I didn't have the proof. Not yet. I put my head down. I finished my MBA. I got the promotion. I planned the dinner at Delmonico's. I thought, okay, this is it. One last try. If they reject me now, I'm done. And they did. They rejected me in the most brutal way possible. Wish granted. I pulled my car into the parking garage of my apartment building. I turned off the engine. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't lonely. It was the silence of a slate being wiped clean. I took out my phone. I had 7 missed calls from my mother, 2 from my father, 1 text from Aunt Carol saying, "You are a disgrace." I went to my contacts. I selected Mom, block caller. I selected Dad, block caller. I selected Caleb, block caller. I selected Aunt Carol, block caller. I walked into my apartment, locked the door, and for the first time in my life, I truly breathed. But the storm wasn't over. I had walked out of the eye of the hurricane, but the tail winds were about to hit me with a force I never expected. The truth about Caleb and where my $40,000 actually went was about to come knocking on my door. The days following the dinner were a blur of strange, quiet peace. I went to work. I came home. Nobody called to ask for money. Nobody called to guilt-trip me about not visiting. It was like I had amputated a gangrenous limb. The pain of the surgery was there, sharp and throbbing, but the poison was gone. I moved. I couldn't stay in the apartment they knew about. I broke my lease, paid the penalty, and found a beautiful place closer to my office. It was a loft with high ceilings and exposed brick. The kind of place I always wanted but deemed too expensive, when I was saving every penny for my family's emergencies. My new landlady, Mrs. Higgins, was a stark contrast to Elena. She was a widow in her 70s, tiny and bird-like, with eyes that disappeared when she smiled. On my second day, she knocked on my door. I stiffened, my old instincts flaring up. What did I do wrong? Was the music too loud? I opened the door. Mrs. Higgins was standing there holding a Tupperware container. "I made too much chicken soup," she said, her voice crinkly and warm. "And you look like a young man who works too hard and eats too much takeout. It's got extra dumplings." I stared at the soup. My mother had never cooked for me unless it was a holiday and guests were watching. Thank you," I stammered. "You didn't have to." "Nonsense." She patted my arm. "Welcome home, Joshua." I took the soup, closed the door, and sat on the floor of my unpacking-filled living room. I took a bite. It was hot, salty, and tasted like care. I wept. I sat there on the floor and cried over chicken soup because it highlighted everything I had never had. But the universe wasn't done with me yet. The silence I had imposed was about to be broken, not by my parents, but by the one person who held the key to their destruction. Sophia. Sophia was my best friend from high school. We had drifted apart over the years, mostly because she had briefly dated Caleb a few years back, and it made things awkward. I had always harbored a crush on her. She was smart, fierce, and saw through people's nonsense. But Caleb, in typical golden child fashion, had claimed her first. I hadn't spoken to her in 2 years. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sophia. "I heard about the dinner. Are you okay? We need to talk. It's about Caleb. It's important." My heart hammered against my ribs. It's about Caleb. I met her at a coffee shop downtown. Sophia looked tired. She was twisting a paper napkin into shreds. "Hey," I said, sitting down. "What's going on? Did my parents send you?" "No," she said quickly. "God, no. I blocked them ages ago." She looked up at me, her brown eyes serious. "Joshua, I've been holding on to something because I was afraid of hurting you, and I was afraid of your dad. But after what I heard he said to you, you need to know." She pulled a thick manila envelope out of her bag and slid it across the table. "What is this?" I asked. "Open it." I opened the clasp. Inside were printouts, emails, bank transfer receipts, and a letter from the dean of the university medical school. I picked up the letter first. It was dated 3 years ago. "Dear Mr. Caleb Adams, due to academic failure and repeated violations of the Student Conduct Code regarding illicit substances, you are hereby expelled from the pre-medical program effective immediately." I read it twice. 3 years ago? But he's in residency. Mom said he's in residency. "He's not," Sophia said, her voice hard. "He never even finished his first year. He's been lying to them. Or maybe they know and they're lying to everyone else. I don't know. I flipped to the next page. It was a screenshot of a text conversation between Caleb and Sophia from 2 years ago. Caleb, "Soph, please. I need 5K. The guys are gonna break my legs. Dad won't send more until next week." Sophia, "Caleb, stop. You have a gambling problem. Tell your parents." Caleb, "If you tell them, I'll kill myself. I swear. Just lend me the money." "Gambling," I whispered. The image of the casino in Vegas flashed in my mind. "It's bad, Josh," Sophia said. "He's addicted to online poker and sports betting. That Porsche? He pawned the title to a loan shark 6 months ago. He's driving a rental car that looks like it when he visits home." I felt a cold rage building in my chest, different from the sadness at the dinner. This was the rage of a man realizing he had been robbed. "The London money," I said, my voice shaking. 3 years ago, Mom called me. She said they were losing the house. She needed $40,000. Sophia's face went pale. She reached into the envelope and pulled out a bank statement she had managed to get from Caleb when they were dating. He had left his laptop open. "Look at the date," she pointed. There it was. A transfer of $40,000 into Caleb's account. The date matched exactly the day after I wired the money to my parents. And the transaction immediately following it? $40,000 transfer to BetKings online offshore. The room spun. My parents hadn't been losing the house. The business wasn't failing. They had taken my life savings, the money I scraped together by starving myself, the money that represented my dream of studying in London, and they had given it to Caleb to pay off a gambling debt. They stole my future to pay for his addiction, and they called it family comes first. "They knew," I said, my voice sounding like gravel. "They knew he wasn't in school. They knew he was gambling, and they bled me dry to keep his secret. They're enablers, Josh," Sophia said, reaching for my hand. "They're sick. Caleb is the golden child, so his failures are their failures. They'd rather destroy you than admit their precious prince is a screw-up." I looked at the papers. This wasn't just evidence. This was ammunition. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because Caleb called me yesterday," Sophia said. "He's in deep again, deeper than ever. He owes money to some very bad people. Real criminals, not just websites. He's desperate. And since you cut them off, the ATM is closed." I sat back in my chair. A dark realization washed over me. "They're going to come for me," I said. "If the ATM is closed, they're going to try to break the door down." Sophia nodded. "Be ready." I looked at the evidence scattered on the table. The lies, the theft, the betrayal. "I won't just be ready," I said, gathering the papers. "I'm going to end this." I didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, the storm made landfall inside the one place I thought was safe, my office. It was Tuesday morning. I was in the main conference room, the glass-walled one that overlooks the city skyline. I was presenting the quarterly strategy to our biggest client, a tech conglomerate that accounted for 40% of our firm's revenue. Lincoln was there, sitting at the head of the table. I was in my element. I was confident, articulate, commanding the room. For a moment, I forgot about Aaron, Elena, and Caleb. Then the heavy glass doors swung open. It wasn't a subtle entrance. Gray, a colleague of mine who had always been jealous of my promotion, a man who would step over his own grandmother to get ahead, was holding the door open with a concerned look on his face. "I'm so sorry to interrupt," Gray said, his voice dripping with insincere apology. "But there's an emergency. Joshua's parents are here. They say it's life or death." My blood ran cold. I turned around. Standing in the doorway were Aaron and Elena. But they didn't look like the arrogant monarchs from Delmonico's. They looked wrecked. My father wasn't wearing a tie. His shirt was rumpled. My mother's makeup was smeared, her eyes red and puffy. "Joshua," my mother wailed, pushing past Gray. She threw herself into the room, ignoring the stunned clients. "Oh, thank God. We've been trying to call you. Why did you block us?" Lincoln stood up, his face hardening. "What is the meaning of this? We are in a meeting. I don't care about your meeting, my father shouted, stepping in behind Elena. He looked manic. My son is in danger. We need help. I stood frozen at the front of the room, the laser pointer still in my hand. I saw the clients exchanging uncomfortable glances. This was a disaster. This was exactly what Gray wanted, to humiliate me, to show that I was unstable, dragging drama into the workplace. Dad, Mom, I said, my voice dangerously low. Get out. Now. We can't. Elena sobbed, grabbing my arm. I flinched away from her touch. It's Caleb. They have him, Joshua. The men. They said if we don't pay by noon, they're gonna break his hands. His surgeon's hands. He's a surgeon. My father bellowed at the room, trying to salvage some status even in his desperation. My son is a neurosurgeon and he's being targeted. We need $50,000. Right now. You have to give it to us, Joshua. I don't have $50,000, I said coldly. Yes, you do, my father yelled. You just got this big promotion. You have that bonus. Give it to me. It's your brother's life. Mr. Adams, Lincoln stepped forward, his voice like ice. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Security is on the way. I'm not leaving until I get the check. Aaron slammed his hand on the conference table, right next to the client's coffee. You selfish bastard. He spat at me. You'd let your brother be crippled? After all we did for you. I looked at them. I saw the panic in their eyes. It was real. They were terrified. But they weren't terrified for me. They were terrified for their idol. And they were still lying. Still clinging to the neurosurgeon myth even as the loan shark circled. I looked at Gray, who was smirking in the corner. I looked at the clients, who looked horrified. I had two choices. I could let security drag them out, leaving a cloud of suspicion and embarrassment over my career. Or I could finish it, right here, right now. I walked over to my laptop, which was still connected to the giant projector screen. You say Caleb is a surgeon? I asked, my voice amplifying through the conference room speakers. You know he is, my mother shrieked. Stop playing games. And you say he needs money for… What was it? Ransom? Yes. He was kidnapped, my father lied. A clumsy, desperate lie. No, I said. He wasn't. I minimized my presentation. I opened the file Sophia had given me. I had scanned everything. Joshua, what are you doing? Lincoln asked warningly. Cleaning the slate, I said. I clicked the first image. Bam. The projector screen filled with the expulsion letter from the university. Expelled. Academic failure. Drug possession. The room gasped. My father froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Caleb hasn't been a medical student for 3 years, I said, my voice steady. He was kicked out freshman year. I clicked the next image. The screenshot of the text messages. I need $5K. Gambling. I'll kill myself. He's not a surgeon, I continued, looking directly at my father. He's a gambling addict. He doesn't have surgeon's hands. He has hands that throw dice. Turn it off, my mother screamed, lunging for the laptop. I blocked her with my body. I clicked the final image. The bank statement. The date of the foreclosure scare. My $40,000 transfer in. The $40,000 transfer out to Betcrinks. And this, I said, pointing to the screen. This is the money I saved for my master's degree in London. The money you told me was to save our family home. You stole it. You stole my future to pay his bookie. I turned to the clients. I apologize for this display, but I value transparency above all else. I am not talking about student loans or family emergencies. I am talking about a gambling addiction funded by theft and fraud. My father looked small. For the first time in his life, he looked small. The lie he had built his entire identity around, the successful doctor's son, was shattered on a 100-inch screen in 4K resolution. You ungrateful, he whispered, but there was no power in it. I'm not ungrateful, I said. I'm done. I'm not giving you a cent. If Caleb owes money to criminals, maybe he should sell the Porsche. Oh wait, he already pawned that, didn't he? My mother sank into a chair, sobbing into her hands. Not tears of sorrow, but tears of exposure. Security! Lincoln's voice boomed. 2 security guards entered the room. Escort these people out, Lincoln ordered. And if they ever set foot in this building again, call the police immediately. My father tried to muster one last shred of dignity. He straightened his jacket. You'll regret this, Joshua. You're dead to us. Dad? I said, looking him in the eye, feeling absolutely nothing. I was dead to you the moment I was born. Now, I'm finally alive. They were let out. The silence in the room was deafening. I closed the laptop. My hands were trembling slightly. I looked at Lincoln. I'll pack my desk. I assumed I was fired. I had just aired dirty laundry in front of our biggest client. Lincoln walked over to me. He looked at the clients, then at me. Then, he did something I never expected. I stood there, waiting for the axe to fall. Gray was practically vibrating with excitement in the corner, ready to take my office. Lincoln turned to the clients, Mr. Henderson and his team. Gentlemen, Lincoln said, his voice calm and authoritative. I apologize for the interruption. However, I believe what you just witnessed is exactly why Joshua is the lead on your account. The room tilted on its axis. Gray's smile dropped. Lincoln continued. You saw a man under immense pressure, facing a personal crisis of the highest magnitude. Did he buckle? Did he lie? Did he hide? No. He presented facts. He established boundaries. He dealt with the root cause of the problem with brutal efficiency and integrity. That is the kind of character I want managing my business. And I assume it's the kind of character you want managing your strategy. Mr. Henderson, a stern man with gray hair, looked at me. He looked at the blank screen where the evidence had been. He slowly nodded. Honesty is a rare commodity, Joshua, Henderson said. Let's take a 10-minute recess. Then, I want to hear the rest of your presentation. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Thank you, sir. Lincoln walked Gray to the door. Gray, take the rest of the day off. In fact, take the week. We need to discuss your judgment in allowing unauthorized visitors into a secure meeting. Gray slunk away. When the meeting finished, successfully, Lincoln called me into his office. I knew, he said quietly, pouring 2 glasses of scotch. You knew what? I asked, sinking into the chair. I ran a background check on you when I hired you. Standard procedure. I saw the lack of family support. I saw the credit history struggle in your early 20s. I suspected you were carrying a heavy load. But I didn't know it was that heavy. He slid a glass toward me. You did good, son. Son. The word hit me hard. My own father had used that word like a weapon. Lincoln used it like a shield. They're going to be waiting outside, I said. They won't leave. I know, Lincoln said. Do you want me to have them removed from the sidewalk? No, I said, standing up. I need to do this myself. I walked out of the building. Sure enough, they were there. Aaron and Elena, standing on the sidewalk, looking like displaced royalty. Passers-by were giving them a wide berth. When they saw me, they rushed forward. Joshua, my mother cried. Please, you made your point. We're sorry. We're so sorry. But they really are going to hurt Caleb. We have nowhere else to go. We sold the jewelry. We maxed the cards. My father looked defeated. Just help us this one last time. We'll pay you back. I swear. I looked at them. I looked at the street where I worked, the building where I was respected. No, I said. How can you be so cruel? My mother wailed. He's your brother. He's a grown man, I said. And you are grown adults. You made a choice every single day for 30 years to value him over me. You invested everything in him. The Porsche, the tuition, my London money. You bet on the wrong horse. Now you have to pay the bookie. We'll lose the house, my father whispered. For real this time. Then sell it, I said. Sell the house. Sell the BMW. Sell the lies. It's over. I stepped closer to them, establishing the final boundary. You wished I had never been born, I said. And in a way, you got lucky. The son you abused, the son you used, he's gone. I'm not him anymore. I'm Joshua. And I don't know you people. Joshua, please. If you contact me again, I said, I will file harassment charges. I have the evidence. I have the means. And unlike you, I have nothing to hide. I turned around and walked back toward the glass doors of my office building. The security guard, who had been watching, nodded at me and stepped in front of my parents, blocking their path. I didn't look back. This was the moment that changed everything, when I finally took back control of my life. Thank you for being patient enough to get here with me. You guys are amazing. Please help me by liking this video and commenting number 1 below, so I know you've been with me on this journey. It not only helps more people find this story, but it lets me know that my experience means something to someone. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to share the rest of this journey. I walked into the elevator and pressed the button for the top floor. As the doors closed, shutting out the sight of my parents on the street, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't realized I was carrying since I was 14 years old. The war was over. I had won. But winning has a cost, and I was about to find out what life looks like when you burn the bridge back to where you came from. The elevator doors opened to the lobby of my apartment building, and for the first time in 32 years, I didn't feel the ghost of my father standing behind me. I walked into my loft, the one with the exposed brick and the high ceilings that I had chosen just for me, and I collapsed onto the sofa. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat there in the deepening twilight, listening to the city hum outside. You might think that after a victory like that, after exposing the lies, protecting my career, and finally standing up to the people who had tormented me, I would be popping champagne. You might think I'd be dancing on the furniture, but that's not how trauma works. When you finally put down a heavy weight you've been carrying your entire life, you don't float. You ache. Your muscles spasm because they've been tense for so long they've forgotten how to relax. I felt an overwhelming exhaustion, a bone-deep tiredness that sleep couldn't fix. It was the crash after the adrenaline. It was the realization that I was now, officially and irrevocably, an orphan. Not by death but by choice. The first month was the hardest. It was the silence. I had spent my life conditioned to expect the phone to ring with a crisis. Joshua, we need money. Joshua, Caleb crashed the car. Joshua, you're ungrateful. I was used to the chaos. I was addicted to the cortisol spikes. Now, my phone was silent. I had blocked them, yes, but the phantom ringing haunted me. I would wake up at 3 a.m., heart pounding, reaching for my phone to fix a problem that didn't exist. But slowly, the silence transformed. It stopped being empty and started being peaceful. Mrs. Higgins, my landlady, became a strange anchor for me. She didn't pry. She just seemed to know when I was having a bad day. I'd come home to find a fresh loaf of banana bread hanging on my doorknob. Or she'd accidentally buy too many newspapers and leave one for me. It was these small, non-transactional acts of kindness that started to rewire my brain. I realized that love wasn't something you had to buy with a $40,000 check. It was just there. And then there was Sophia. We didn't jump into a relationship immediately. We were both recovering from the blast radius of the Addams family explosion. But she was there. She came over on Friday nights, and we'd order Thai food and sit on my floor, going through the wreckage of the past. Did you know? She asked me one night, twirling noodles on her fork, that Caleb tried to sell me a fake Rolex once? He swore it was real, said he got it from a patient. I laughed, felt rusty but good. A patient? He wasn't even in med school. I know. She shook her head. But the confidence, Josh. He believed his own lies. And your parents believed them too because they wanted to. It's a shared delusion. It's a cult, I corrected her. A cult of 3. 3 months passed. My work at the firm was better than ever. The Henderson account, the one I had nearly lost during the showdown, became our most profitable project. Mr. Henderson even invited me to golf, a cliché I used to hate, but out there on the green, treated with respect by men who judged me on my merit and not my birth order, I found a new sense of confidence. But I still didn't know what had happened to them. I hadn't unblocked them. I hadn't driven past the old house. I stayed in my bubble. Until Julian called. Julian is my cousin, my mother's sister's son. He was always the quiet one at family gatherings, the one who sat in the corner reading a book while Aunt Carol made snide comments and my father bragged. Julian saw everything but said nothing. We met at a coffee shop halfway between my office and the old neighborhood. Julian looked nervous. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said, gripping his mug. "Aunt Elena has been... Well, she's been telling everyone you had a mental breakdown, that you're on drugs. That's why you attacked them at the office." I stirred my black coffee, watching the steam rise. Of course she is. The narrative has to be preserved. If I'm not crazy, then they're monsters. And they can't be monsters. "Well," Julian sighed, "nobody believes her. Not really. The rumors about Caleb, they're out, Josh." "What happened?" I asked. I told myself I didn't care, but I leaned in. "The house is gone," Julian said. The words hit me with a thud. The house, the roof I fixed, the driveway I wasn't allowed to park in. Foreclosed. Sold. Distress sale, Julian corrected. They had to liquidate everything fast. Those guys Caleb owed money to, they weren't playing around. Uncle Aaron had to cash out his retirement, sell the BMW, and sell the house just to cover the principal of the debt. They're living in a 2-bedroom apartment over on 4th Street now. You know the area. I did. It was a rough neighborhood. The kind of place my father used to drive past and lock the doors, making comments about those people. "And Caleb?" I asked. Julian let out a bitter laugh. "Gone. The minute the debt was paid, he took off. Said the stress of the family was too much for his mental health. He's in Florida, I think, trying to become a crypto influencer or some nonsense. He left them, Josh. After they bankrupted themselves for him, he left them in that apartment and didn't look back. I looked out the window. It was poetic justice, savage and precise. They had sacrificed their responsible son to save their golden son, and the golden son had looted the kingdom and fled. They look old, Josh," Julian added softly. "Aunt Elena, she looks 10 years older. She cries a lot. She keeps waiting for Caleb to call." "She'll be waiting a long time," I said, finishing my coffee. Do you want their address?" Julian slid a piece of paper across the table. I looked at the folded napkin, a specific sequence of numbers and letters that represented their new reality. I reached out, took the napkin, and walked over to the trash can in the corner. I dropped it in. "No," I said. "I really don't. The seasons changed. Summer turned into autumn. The leaves in the city parks turned gold and crimson, reminding me of the Thanksgiving holidays of my youth. Thanksgiving had always been a performance in the Addams household. My mother would spend 3 days cooking a perfect turkey that was dry as sawdust. My father would force us to go around the table and say what we were thankful for, but he would critique our answers. Caleb would always be thankful for his gifts, and my parents would beam. I would be thankful for survival, though I never said it out loud. This year, Thanksgiving was going to be different. I decided to host, not a formal dinner, a friendsgiving. I invited Sophia. I invited Lincoln, who it turned out was going through a messy divorce and had nowhere to go. I invited Mrs. Higgins, who had no family left. I invited Julian. I spent the day cooking. I made a turkey, but I brined it the way I wanted. I made stuffing with sausage and apples. I made spicy cranberry sauce. The apartment smelled like sage and butter, not stress and hairspray. Guests started arriving at 4 p.m. Lincoln brought a bottle of whiskey that cost more than my first car. Mrs. Higgins brought a green bean casserole that was 90% cheese and fried onions, and it was delicious. Sophia brought wine and a smile that lit up the room. We sat around my dining table, a table made of reclaimed wood that I had picked out myself. There were no assigned seats. There was no dress code. To Joshua, Lincoln raised his glass, for finding his way. To the chef. Sophia cheered. We ate. We laughed. Lincoln told funny stories about corporate disasters. Mrs. Higgins told us about her wild youth in the 70s. Julian actually spoke, making jokes that had us doubling over. Nobody asked about my salary. Nobody compared me to a neurosurgeon. Nobody told me I was chewing too loud. I looked around the table, bathed in the warm glow of candlelight, and I felt a lump in my throat. But it wasn't the lump of anxiety I used to feel. It was gratitude. This was it. This was what they call a chosen family. These people didn't share my DNA. They didn't have to love me. They chose to. And that made the bond stronger than blood ever could. Then my phone buzzed. I had left it on the counter, face up. The screen lit up. Blocked number. My stomach tightened. I knew. I just knew. It was 7 p.m. on Thanksgiving. The time my mother always made the family calls. I picked up the phone. The room went quiet, sensing the shift in my energy. "Answer it," Sophia whispered, touching my arm. "You're strong enough." I swiped right. "Hello, Joshua." It was my mother. Her voice sounded thin, frail. The imperious tone was gone, replaced by a tremulous waver. "Joshua, is that you?" "It's me," I said, leaning against the kitchen counter. "Oh, thank God. We didn't think you'd answer. We tried your old number, but it didn't work. We got this one from Aunt Carol." Of course. Aunt Carol, the family spy network. "What do you want, Elena?" I didn't call her Mom. Couldn't. There was a pause. I could hear shuffling in the background. We just wanted to say Happy Thanksgiving. We miss you, son. It's very quiet here." "Where is Caleb?" I asked. I knew the answer, but I wanted her to say it. "Oh, well, Caleb is very busy," she lied. The habit was so ingrained she couldn't stop even now. "He has a big conference in Miami. He couldn't make it back. So it's just your father and me." "And the Porsche?" I asked. "Did he drive that to Miami?" Silence. "Joshua, please." My father's voice came on the line. He sounded defeated, broken. "We made mistakes. We know that. We're paying for them. We're in a smaller place now. It's been hard. We were hoping. Maybe we could see you? Just for coffee? We want to fix this." I closed my eyes. I imagined them in their cramped apartment, eating a supermarket turkey alone, staring at the phone. A part of me, the part that was still a little boy, wanted to rush over there and save them. Wanted to write a check. Wanted to fix the roof. But then I looked at my table. I looked at Sophia, looking at me with concern. I looked at Lincoln, who had stood up for me when my own father wouldn't. I looked at Mrs. Higgins, who fed me when I was starving for care. "You can't fix this," I said. "Some things you break can't be glued back together. You didn't just break a plate, Aaron. You ground it into dust." "But we're your parents," my mother sobbed. "Family comes first." "No," I said firmly. "Family is a verb. Family is what you do, not who you are. And right now, I'm having dinner with my family. People who respect me. People who don't steal from me. People who don't wish I was never born." "Joshua, don't hang up. Please, we have nothing." "You have each other," I said. "And you have the memory of your golden child. That has to be enough." "Joshua." I pressed the red button. I didn't block the number immediately. I stared at the phone for a second. Then I turned it off completely. I walked back to the table. "Everything okay?" Mrs. Higgins asked gently. I picked up my wine glass. "Everything is perfect. Who wants pie?" The laughter started up again. The shadow had passed over the house, but it hadn't lingered. I had exorcised the demons, not with holy water, but with boundaries. A year later, my life had settled into a rhythm of success and contentment that I previously thought was reserved for people in movies. I had been promoted again to partner at the firm. Sophia and I had moved in together, into a beautiful townhouse with a garden, because we both wanted a dog. We got a golden retriever and named him Lucky, a subtle nod to the fact that we had made our own luck. I hadn't heard from my parents since that Thanksgiving call. Julian told me they had stopped asking about me. They had sunk into a bitter, isolated existence. alienating even Aunt Carol with their constant complaints about how the world had wronged them. They were stuck in a time loop, replaying their glory days, refusing to accept their reality. I was free, or so I thought. There was one last thread to cut, one last ghost to banish. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, buried in my spam folder. I was clearing out my emails when I saw the subject line, "Hey bro, business proposition." The sender was cryptokingcaleb@gmail.com. My finger hovered over the mouse. I knew I should just delete it. I knew nothing good could come from opening that digital Pandora's box. But curiosity is a powerful force. I wanted to see the face of the enemy one last time. I opened it. "Yo Josh, long time no talk. Hope the corporate grind isn't killing you. Listen, I know things got weird with mom and dad. They're crazy, right? You were smart to get out. They wouldn't stop nagging me about money, so I had to bounce. Toxic vibes, man. Anyway, I'm in Miami now. Things are huge. I'm launching a new NFT project. It's going to be the next Bitcoin. I've got some investors lined up, but I need a bridge loan to cover the marketing launch. I need about $20,000. I know you have it. And honestly, you owe me. Think about it. If I hadn't been the screw-up, you wouldn't have been so motivated to succeed, right? I basically made you who you are. So, cut me a check, and I'll let you in on the ground floor. 10x returns, guaranteed. Don't be a stranger. Dr. C, he signed it Dr. C. I stared at the screen. I read it again. The audacity was breathtaking. It was almost impressive in its delusion. He took no responsibility. He blamed our parents, the people who had destroyed their lives for him, calling them toxic. He framed his abuse of me as a motivation service he provided. And he was asking for money, again. And he still called himself doctor. I felt a bubble of laughter rising in my chest. It wasn't bitter laughter. It was genuine, belly-shaking laughter. It was the laughter of someone who realizes the monster under the bed is just a pile of dirty laundry. Caleb wasn't a villain. He wasn't a mastermind. He was a sad, broken child in a man's body, forever chasing a high he would never catch, forever needing a mommy and daddy to bail him out. He was empty. I hit reply. My fingers hovered over the keys. I thought about typing out a furious manifesto. I thought about listing every sin, every theft, every lie. I thought about telling him exactly how pathetic he was. But then I stopped. Why? Why give him my energy? Why give him my anger? Anger is a form of connection. Hate is a form of attachment. If I screamed at him, I was still engaging in the dynamic. I was still playing the game. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. I highlighted the text of my reply and deleted it. Then I moved the cursor to the trash can icon. Delete conversation. This cannot be undone. Good, I said aloud to the empty office. I clicked delete. Then I went to my settings and blocked the email address. I stood up from my desk and walked over to the window. The city was spread out below me, a grid of lights and possibilities. I thought about the boy on the roof in the freezing rain. I thought about the young man eating ramen and dreaming of London. I thought about the son who stood in Delmonico's and wished himself out of existence. I wished I could go back and hug that younger version of myself. I wished I could tell him, hold on, it gets better. You're going to build a life so full of love you won't even miss them. I picked up my phone and called Sophia. Hey, she answered, her voice warm. On your way home? Yeah, I said, grabbing my coat. I'm leaving now. Do you want me to pick up anything for dinner? Mrs. Higgins brought over some lasagna, she said. And Lincoln is dropping by later to watch the game. Sounds perfect, I said. I'm coming home. Home. It wasn't a place where I had to earn my keep. It wasn't a place where I was compared to a phantom. It was a place where I was enough. I walked out of the office, into the cool evening air. I didn't look down at the sidewalk where my parents had once begged. I looked up. The sky was clear, and the stars were beginning to emerge. I was Joshua Adams, and for the first time in my life that name belonged only to me. Thank you for going on this journey with me. It wasn't an easy story to tell, but it was a necessary one. If you take anything away from my experience, I hope it's this: you cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. We are often taught that family is an unconditional obligation, a sunk cost that we must keep investing in no matter how much it drains us. But toxic dynamics, especially the golden child and scapegoat triangulation, are not just difficult phases. They are systems designed to exploit one person to prop up another. My parents didn't just favor Caleb. They needed my failure to justify his success, and they needed my resources to hide his failures. The hardest lesson I learned is that boundaries are not punishments. They are protections. Walking away wasn't an act of cruelty toward them. It was an act of love toward myself. You have the right to fire toxic people from your life, even if they gave birth to you. You have the right to redefine family as the people who support your growth, respect your no, and love you for who you are, not what you can provide. I want to hear from you now. This is a safe space. Have you ever had to make the difficult decision to cut ties or set a hard boundary with a family member to save your own mental health? What was the moment you knew enough is enough? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Or, if this story resonated with you and you agree that we need to normalize prioritizing our peace, just comment the word good. It lets me know you're with me, and it helps push this message to others who might need to hear it right now. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Joshua, and I'll see you in the next video.